This is brutal power wrapped in an elegant machine.
Well, at Prism, a very special treat. A Hall of Famer in New Zealand and in Australia, affectionately known as the Babe, the Wanganui whiz kid when he was a young rider. The one and only Brent Thomson joins us. Babe, this is going to be a lot of fun. I've got a coffee. I'm ready to talk a bit about your career and also your now association with Prism, mate. Great to see you.
Yes. I've only recently known Alan, but I've known Pete for many years, so he sort of fairly recently asked me to come on board, and as I got a presence in New Zealand, but wanted to sort of dig a bit deeper there with studs and trainers as such. So they were of the view that I was the man to help out there. So yes, it'll be good. I know a lot of people obviously still there from my youth, but there's a lot of new names that I don't know as well, so it'll be touching base with them.
You do a bit of work obviously with New Zealand Bloodstock though, so you're very connected in the New Zealand racing industry?
Yes, well, I've been with New Zealand Bloodstock for, what are we, 2022, so 21 years since I retired, and so I've been in that role as Victorian representative for that length of time. Haven't been back there for the obvious reasons of flights and unable to travel. So it'll probably be November next, Jason, so before I go back there, which will be our ready-to-run sale, the 2-year-old sale.
Yeah, it's bloody frustrating, isn't it? But we've made our way through that, and now there's lots of blue sky ahead of us. Can I take this opportunity just to reflect a little bit on your incredible career? As soon as I start talking about your career as a jockey, do you have a smile on your face as you fondly reflect on your great career?
Yeah, obviously it was a very good career, plenty of highlights, not many, bad times, but over the 27 years of my career riding in different parts of the world, and winning somewhere between 2,500 to 3,000 races, and plenty of good races in other parts of the world, as apart from here in Australia and New Zealand, obviously. So yeah, well, I guess that's why I was inducted into both those Hall of Fames, really. So that's a great honour itself. This is a bit of a quiet time of the year because of winter.
Yeah.
But before we know it, August rolls around and we're talking stakes races.
Yeah, and we start talking about Cox Plates.
Correct.
And we talk about you a lot there. What is it about New Zealand that makes it so special when we think about Brent Thomson, we think about Jimmy Cassidy, we think about Shane Dye, Greg Childs, and now at the moment, James McDonald? What makes New Zealand jockeys in particular so special?
Jockeys don't just roll into becoming out of nowhere to be a leading apprentice or a jockey. Generally, there's a background to pony clubs, hunting, doing all those sorts of things that are part of your pre-career to being a jockey. So that was certainly in my case that was the case.
Yeah,
did all those things prior to being an apprentice and then a fully fledged jockey, but. You speak of those, and there was plenty of others too. But in current terms, James McDonald, he's got the world at his feet actually. In lots of ways. He's leading jockey by a long way in Sydney. He's obviously at Royal Ascot. He'll be riding there. All those things. World's at his oyster, so to speak. So. I think that would be my view on it, Jason, in terms of upbringings on the land, not necessarily city boys type of thing.
Yeah, that's interesting. Yeah. So that's what it was like for you. So were you doing the pony clubs? That's where you fell in love with it. I mean, you were perfectly built for it as well. The fact that you were able to ride light and obviously short. So straight away, being a jockey was what you always dreamed of.
Oh yeah. Well. My father before me was a jockey, although he had weight issues and turned to riding over fences, which was always quite strong over there. Then got injured, became a trainer, and at that stage I was young, going through pony clubs, through shows, through hunting in the Taranaki, which the famous Myers family, lots of famous families came from there, and so that was a weekend ritual doing those things, and I must say a great part of my life, that early experience, and I think it taught lots of things, and I can look back on those days quite fondly and with great memories as well.
Yeah, I mean, in Australia you made this massive impact straight away, and then picked up to ride, for the Royals or for Sangster family, etc. over in Europe. Just give us a snapshot. We know the Australian side of it so well, but give us a snapshot of what it was like to ride in Europe for all these incredible owners and the big trainers.
For my part, I was lucky to have that association with Robert Sangster, and of course that opened lots of doors, going over there and riding for him, and there weren't many places you couldn't go, but it did develop also due to the fact that I had a little, I call it a busman's holiday, and rode a winter at Royal Ascot and on one of Robert's horses. That was called then the Corkinorowy, which is now the Golden Jubilee.
Right, okay.
So it changed its name from that.
It's now Platinum Jubilee.
Yeah, and she was a champion sprinter, and I was sort of in awe of the likes of Lester Piggott, Pat Edry, all those big names in European racing. Steve was there, Walter, Swinburne, Woody Carson, you can go on forever. And then other parts of Europe, of course, the best French jockeys and Irish jockeys and so on. So to go there and ride amongst those guys, whether it be Epsom, whether it be Yorks or Newmarkets, it was just quite amazing, But I was always a fan of pedigrees and so on. So to get all of a sudden you're going over there and riding these horses worth $1 million, because that going back then there was great wars at the sales between the whether it be Sheikh Mohammed, Robert. Horses reaching $12 million, and
it's an incredible time, wasn't it?
So, but you rode lots of horses that were super bred, and with a lot, their purchase price was in those days, talk about 1983, 84 million US dollars, and so that was part of it. I enjoyed that part of it as well, but I think. The mere fact of riding against the greatest jockeys, that the world's seen, and on some of the great race courses that we know about, and that's not taking anything away from our racing. Our racing, especially these days, most countries are in awe of that.
Yeah, that's right.
So I think the tides turn, but still, the best bred horses in the world are probably in Europe and America, without a shadow of doubt, because we see all the shuttle stallions.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
But the great imbalance with English racing is the prize money. You got these amazingly bred horses for the wealthiest people in the racing world, including the Queen, for the least prize money. It's amazing. When I was there, a Bath maiden on a Monday was something like of 3,000 quid, and I think it's less today.
Yeah, it's that lower level. I mean, some of their higher level, they've certainly boosted prize money, but you raise a great point. There's so many things we could talk about in your career, and we'd be here for hours and hours reflecting on all the incredible moments. A little like Black Caviar and Luke Nolan, a little like Huey Bowman and Winks, you'll always be associated with a horse who was breathtaking, winning a Cox Plate in the mighty Dulcify. And you've been on record talking a lot about how an incredible horse he was. In that Cox Plate, when you let him rip, did you realise how far in front you were? And what was that feeling like?
I sort of, because when I went forward, it wasn't necessarily my choice. I was only a passenger. He sort of just saw daylight and took off. But in saying that, when I had a look to my left, Shivari was stuck down on the fence, so I didn't see any point in waiting around. But I probably didn't realise until sort of last 50 metres to how far I was in front. He had, as I've mentioned in the past, such an explosive turn of foot, which the good or great horses have, and he had that, and you could switch him on and you could switch him off, make 2 runs in a race if you had to, and so he was pretty unique, and I think one of the great horses that we've seen, over the years. In that race, it's always won by the best, and he was one of those.
Oh, no doubting that. I mean, it is a weight for age championship of Australasia. There's no doubting that's one of the great weight for age races in the world. When you look back on your career, is there a race? Is there one that got away that you think, bugger, I really wish I had won that?
No doubt the Melbourne Cup, because I think I had about 8 rides in my whole career because I went away. But working backwards, Dulcify, I have no doubt would have won it. So there was one I had to turn down the ride on Gurner's Lane, whom I'd won the Caulfield Cup on.
That's right.
I always say I would have had to ride him as good as Mick did to win, but anyway, the record says he won the race. And then I rode Vanderham in the Caulfield Cup, but came over to ride a mare called Kythera, who was going really, really well. She, I don't think she raced in Australia prior to it, but that was a day that it rained like like no one's. Went from day to night.
Bobby Skelton won, and he was pitch black,
and he
mud all over him.
Yeah, well, that actually. Quite, I know this to be a fact. So they were both by a stallion called Hermes, who was who their horses, his horse stock loved wet ground, and clearly like Caulfield Cup forms always great going into a Melbourne Cup. But the fact is that the owners paid me to come over and ride Kythera. So whilst I could have ridden him in the Melbourne Cup, I felt I would have been doing the wrong thing by. They gave me the opportunity to ride Kythera. She was going well. I think if she took more ground off them, but she just didn't. He swam.
Yeah, that's right.
She couldn't quite swim.
So about 8. Were you on Bohemian Grove? Did you ride when Sangster brought 2 out and Beldale Ball with Letzi led and won, and then he had the favourite Bohemian Grove who finished near last? Were you?
No, I rode. Horse called Yashmak that I'd won the Adelaide Cup on.
Right.
But I always had a thing against Beldale Ball because when the Duke of Norfolk Stakes, remember, was mile and a half, a 2 mile race.
2 mile, that's
2
right.
mile.
Yeah, now known as Andrew Ramsden.
Yeah, well, Robert never used to come out that time of the year, but he did for whatever reason. That year, and anyway, I rode Beldale Ball in the Duke of Norfolk, and he finished 200 yards last, or 200 metres last, and Robert was so embarrassed, and I thought this might be the slowest horse you've ever sent out there, so I always had a thing against him. We had at least 3, maybe 4 horses in the race, but I fell off on Caulfield Guineas Day. When they used to have a crossing after the winning post.
Oh, right.
And the horse I was riding in the could have even been the Guineas, I can't remember, but he jumped the crossing, shot me out of the saddle, and I split my heel. Oh. So I never rode any of those horses in a lead-up race to it, and so I made a choice because I'd won the Adelaide Cup on Yashmak. I didn't really like Bohemian Grove's chances, and
You dislike Beldale
Ball for my own reasons.
Oh, that is a great story. Incredible career. It's fantastic that you're still involved in racing. How do you view New Zealand racing at the moment? And we've noticed a real resurgence of Australians buying New Zealand bred. We've always seen it so strong in Karaka. We know that, and the Australians are always over there. But how do you sense that New Zealand racing's going?
Just recently, it's good to see they're having an injection into prize money. Of course, it's a lot smaller country than us, and they haven't, it's not as big. But I hope, and I'm sure all the participants in New Zealand racing hope that it'll keep on going up. I think that the reason that we're seeing a lot of horses being bought here, which was like the good old days, poaching horses, staying bred horses and whatever, to come over and race. Some of them are maidens, some of them have won a maiden.
That was always the play, wasn't it? What a nuisance coming over, New Zealand bred coming to win a Melbourne Cup. It was always the first place Australians looked for a stayer was New Zealand. But then suddenly the emergence through vintage crop winning the Melbourne Cup, everything changed towards Europe.
It did, and of course that over those years of the Europeans coming out and winning the race also forced the price of horses up sky high.
Yeah.
And we probably lacked a little bit because Sir Tristram had passed away. Zabil's been gone for a few years, so we probably had a little bit of a cooling period in a way. But I think there's a lot of growth. There's some nice sires that are doing young horses coming through, and added to that, there's places like Macau, like Malaysia, like Singapore, probably not buying as much. Where the New Zealand horse has been so successful in the last 2 or 3 years, it's hard to argue against the stakes winners that they've been producing, and so therefore the focus has probably gone back to the way that it used to be, and they're buying these horses out of there. You see Aussie Kerr, they put their hand up pretty high for lots of horses, Johnny O'Neill and all those boys.
Yeah, that's right.
So it's great to see, because I think a lot of horses were lost to Asia and would have been more successful in Australia due to their stamina, whereas they got over there. Maybe distance aren't so suitable. How do we? It's hypothetical, but you don't know how they would have been having if they came to Australia.
Yeah, with races that are suitable.
Yeah, various. Of course, not so much the sprinting side, but more your middle distance horse to your mile and a half horse and so on.
And what is it with New Zealand and the stoutness? Because that seems to be, its calling card, if you like. You think about Savabeel and Tavistock and now Tarzino, Reliable Man standing there, etc., producing these really stout horses that, and the beauty is from an Australian market and a New Zealand market, you get to race them year on year for great prize money now.
Yes, well, it's always been said that, the country lends itself to growing horses with great bone and therefore, you hope that soundness is longevity. And, they're not 2 and 3 year olds and see you later. So I think that's, my view, rightly or wrongly, something to do with it.
Okay. So now, as you're so involved with New Zealand breeding and you're watching so much New Zealand racing, Prism say to you, hey, babe, we need you to open a few doors for us in New Zealand. So that's an exciting opportunity for you.
Yes, obviously I'll be making a few phone calls. It's not conflicting with NZB.
No, not at all. Compliments.
If anything, it's a help. And it's such a great product where everyone's on the same page. Whether it's commercial studs, the stables, which in this day and age, that reflects on keeping update to owners and everything that's put into it, access to it, as I understand it.
Yep.
And so my job will be just passing on the idea for them to be associated with Prism.
Yeah, I reckon the Prism will just want to get you in a headlock and get you to go and introduce them to everyone in New Zealand racing, because you know them all. And then obviously you've got a great selling point, and Tiako's been involved in utilising the Prism products as well.
Yes. So there's already people that are big names and using Prism. So that's a good selling point as well.
Yeah, and we've got this emergence. I mean, we've so many New Zealand either trainers and jockeys coming to Australia. So once again, it's that great breeding ground for people in the industry, and obviously your products. So Prism going across there complements and helps it all. So is that going to be a development of New Zealand youngsters? We've seen Paddy Bussett and son Trent coming over to Australia. I don't want them all to come to Australia. No. We've got to keep going and keep building New Zealand racing.
Absolutely. It's so good to see the numbers of New Zealand horses and trainers obviously coming over to the carnivals now, where for a while that wasn't so much the case. But again, the results have been fantastic, and people it's there in black and white to see.
Yeah, we've seen it in Queensland, haven't we, recently? Yep. Like, I think there was 35 New Zealand horses came across for the Queensland Carnival, which is quite remarkable. And prize money increases in New Zealand significant as well. So it's been in recent years more of a trading market. That's starting to change. We want to see people racing, and Karaka's a great example of that, people racing horses in NZ.
Yes, well, by keeping them there, and prize money going up, that it's easier to entice new ownership as well.
Yeah, that's right.
And that's why Australia has been going absolutely flying, because of the prize money levels. Then it just reflects on the yearling sales and broodmare sales, etc., etc. The money goes around.
You are the perfect man to open some doors, mate. So you've got a big job at hand. The Prism are very lucky to have you. The Hall of Famer from New Zealand and Australia, the one and only Brent Thomson. But always a pleasure to have a chat to you, mate. Reflect very quickly on your career and then look forward to the future. And good luck with everything at Prism.
Thank you very much. It was good to chat.
This is brutal power wrapped in an elegant machine.